So welcome everyone to this expert interview with Larry Karas. Did I pronounce that right?
Sure.
Sure. Larry is the owner of Stratic, and he's a business coach and mentor, and also sits on the board of many companies, both as an advisor and a board director or one of the directors of the board. My name is Stephen Goldberg of Optimus Performance, and I'm bringing you practical tips and ideas on leadership, team development, and employee performance. And welcome, Larry. Thank you for joining me today. And I met Larry through a cycling group. He's a very active cyclist, and I've been as well. We both like to keep fit, and we have a lot of other things in common that we discovered through casual conversation before and after, during sometimes cycling. And Larry was telling me how he, besides being a business coach and mentor to small, medium-sized businesses, he also sits on the board of several companies, some that I've heard of. And I thought this would be a great subject to interview Larry about, because I would like to learn more about boards. I read about them all the time, but I don't know how they function. I've never had the experience. And I'd like to learn how his experience has been with them and how it's benefited small, medium-sized businesses. Those are the types of companies I work with, and see what we can learn from Larry about this. So maybe Larry, give us some background or some of the history, your background of who you are and how you got into doing what you're doing today.
With pleasure. Thanks a lot, Steve. And it's great to see you off the road without your helmet and in perhaps the kind of setting that we're more familiar with over the years. So it's a pleasure to talk to you about what experience I may have to share with your viewers. So I'm an entrepreneur. I've been growing businesses since the early 80s, and mostly manufacturing. I've been working in a variety of different fields, from the industrial packaging field to the CPG and agri-food sector. My background is history of science and an international law degrees. And then I joined a family business that I turned around and grew in the strapping business, a company called Carry Strap International. And after I sold my stake in that business, I entered a completely different sector in the food business, and grew a functional food business in Minnesota that became a national leader in the US, a company called Helios Nutrition. Subsequently sold that business, helped grow a non-dairy beverage business here in Canada called Natura. And subsequent to that, founded Stratic International, where I share my experience as an entrepreneur and governance leader with colleagues in the field. So I've been working on boards since the early 80s. I was kind of the barefoot shoemaker's kid, because I didn't have a board in my own company, but I was asked by a nonprofit, a dance company, Tangent, to help them form their first board. And I learned on the fly about the challenges and the opportunities and the value added that comes from working with a board. And I subsequently joined other boards like the Chamber of Commerce of Quebec, the Ys of Quebec, YMCA Quebec. I was invited to join the Y Canada board, and following that, I joined a number of other for-profit corporations, from cheese businesses like Fromagerie Perron to the board of Avril, which is Quebec's largest natural food chain. I work with a cold pressed juice company called Dose. I'm on the board of a vertical farming business called Inno 3B. Inno 3B. I work with a variety of agrofoliar companies called Agro 100, and several other companies whose CEOs I coach. And generally, companies with teams from 15 to about 950 employees. They're small, medium-sized businesses.
Well, actually, that's over 500 now is considered large business.
Okay. Well, what's interesting is that in at least a couple of the cases, they graduate.
I learned that from you, from one of the slides you sent me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was in there.
Well, yeah. I think it's it's a moving target depending on the depending on the sector. I know. I mean, in some of the tech businesses that I'm involved with. Small teams can generate tremendous revenue. So, it's also a matter of scale.
Revenue.
So typically we're looking at anywhere from, about $10 million to about $200-300 million worth of revenue.
So let's get into this subject of boards. And so from my understanding, there's two types of boards. There's an advisory board and there's a board of directors. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that could be both for profit or non-profit companies, right?
Typically, in my experience, the non-profit sector, you're talking about formal board of directors, and the board of directors basically has the ultimate responsibility for the corporation. They hire and fire the CEO. And they have legal obligations as far as the other shareholders are concerned, and as far as government, everything from deductions at source to salaries. Whereas the advisory board is a less formal, less structured organization that that typically has many of the same responsibilities without necessarily having as much of the legal constraints that a formal board of directors has.
So typically, let's say a small, medium-sized business that wants to form an advisory board, let's say a for-profit company or a board, it would be an advisory board then.
Look, I mean, every company has by law to have a nominal board of directors. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a company that decides that they want to have independent members that come in and provide their input to help the company keep aligned with their strategic plan and to monitor their progress. So, like I said, I mean, I think you look at sort of the genesis of an advisory board or a board of directors. The CEO or the principal shareholders will say, we could really benefit from some outside input on a governance perspective that would help us all stay aligned. There's a cost to that, but there's also a benefit. So it's a matter of really getting the management team to appreciate what their expectations are and how they can use this particular tool. It is a tool in their toolbox.
So when you say there's a cost to it, can you explain that? What do you mean by the cost? You have to pay the board members to be on the board, I guess.
I think the first challenge is time, because I think that many entrepreneurs, I've been in that boat myself, you're running fast and furious. You're dealing with day-to-day challenges, and to say to yourself and to your team, we're going to step back on a quarterly basis, say, and we're going to take a half a day or a day to just make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all pulling in the same direction. That in itself is a commitment from the corporation. So time is one of the first challenges. Then in terms of cost, financial cost, typically a for-profit corporation is going to remunerate the board directors or the advisory board members with a retainer or with a fee for each of the meetings that they attend, or in some cases with stock options, or a combination of all of the above. Because you want the members of the board to have skin in the game. So that's typically a consideration that some entrepreneurs will say, well, I have better counsel when I shave in the morning. I look at myself and I figure, what direction do I want to take? But in a highly competitive and complex and fast-moving environment like the one we're working in today, my experience has been that a successful company and a successful CEO will benefit from the added perspective that and discipline that a board provides.
What comes to mind too is, you talk about the obstacle of time. Last week I published a interview with another guest expert who is a expert. Well, one of the things he's works on with companies is strategic planning. So, which brings to mind the advisory board. How would they be involved if a company, a business owner, entrepreneur wanted to work on his strategic plan, maybe revise it? How would the advisory board fit in? Would they just, be that sounding board for him to come with his objectives and get feedback from them? To what extent would an advisory board get involved, or would it vary depending on the business?
I saw that interview and I thought it was very helpful, chock full of good advice. And I think that anybody who is, who doesn't have a strategic plan could benefit from viewing that, Steve. So kudos to you for that. And typically, I think that if a company doesn't have a strategic plan, then one of the first things that an advisory board or a board of directors will likely do is recommend that they start that whole process. And I mean, it's something that needs to be driven by management, not by the board. The agenda, the priorities, the timelines. Your guest talked about, today we don't talk about a 5-year plan. We might really be challenged to think beyond the next 2 years. But you come up with the analysis that's going to help you figure out where the company's strengths and weaknesses are, and what are the threats out there, and how can we really optimize our opportunities. So I think that the board will help the management come up with the main objectives for that board, for that strategic plan, but the management team has to really implement it. Hopefully, around the advisory board table, you have a variety of different skill sets. I sit on one board where you've got, I come in as a business development guy, but you've got really strong supply chain and very good HR experience, and in another case, a B2C web experience. And you want to be able to tap into that know-how, and then once the plan is drafted and has been, you've got a timeline, you've got an implementation plan. I think that the board should be there to make sure that milestones are met, that we hold management's feet to the fire. If this is the plan, let's plan the work and work the plan and make it happen. And if things happen during the course of business, and there's always something that's happening, how can we either bring ourselves back on track, or how can we seize these opportunities without being so distracted that we lose the focus that the plan has provided. So I find that working hand in hand with management to develop that business plan is really an important building block.
It sounds like you, one of the key things, like I always talk about in my videos, I have a lot of videos on goal setting, and where I encourage people to write them down. And of course, one aspect of that is identifying possible obstacles. And like any strategic plan, you're going to run into obstacles. So does the board help the person deal with those obstacles that are standing in the way? Do you do some problem solving with them? Do you have time for that in your meetings, or is it just touching the surface? Like, how deep can you go in those areas?
Look, my experience is that above and beyond the quarterly meetings, an effective advisory board or board director has to be a go-to resource for the CEO. So, you have to be a phone call away from for any of the big challenges that they may face. A competitor has just threatened or caused a customer to delist you on a grocery store shelf. There's an acquisition opportunity. There's a senior manager that's not happy where they are. You want to be able to be a resource for them, for the CEO, and for that you need to have a good understanding of the business. You have to have a good understanding of the way the team works together, and you have to also understand what are the dynamics of the specific industry that the company is working in, so that you're keeping an eye out for the blind spots. You're helping the CEO just avoid some of the basic potholes that we all face in business.
So it sounds like it's beyond just that quarterly meeting, like you said. It involves building that relationship with the board members, and there's an element of coaching and mentoring as well in between those quarterly meetings. So it's kind of like a partnership arrangement in a way.
It really is. I mean, in that way, I think that as an advisory board member, as a board director, you're adding value on an ongoing basis. And I mean, I can only speak from my own perspective, and that's I happen to be pretty curious, and I'm avid to learn about a business, and you need to be able to invest your time in getting to know a business on an ongoing basis, especially as things move so quickly in today's environment.
Yeah. So let's go back to the benefits, or let's talk about the benefits, because you talked about, the two main obstacles is time and money. I could think of probably another one is the style of leadership, because not every leader, it's like you said, the guy's is shaving in the mirror or in the shower, thinking of his planning, and he thinks that's good enough. So, we'll talk about that too. But before we do, let's talk about, some of the benefits that, not just theoretical benefits, but with all your experience, how have you seen companies benefit from having a board of an advisory board? Because I think I can think of a number of examples. I mean, in one case,
I was working with a family business where you had two generations of ownership and of management, father and mother, and two of their kids, growing a very, very substantial and healthy business. They brought in a senior manager, experienced from outside the family as a managing director, as a CEO to help guide the business's growth. Obviously, there's going to create tensions. It's going to, and I think that in that case, we in business we wear a number of hats. We're founders or shareholders in a business. We're senior managers and we're directors, and kind of separating those hats, especially in a family situation, isn't always that easy. So in this particular case, three independent external directors acted as a counterpoint to the four family members who were all shareholders in the business, and to the CEO, who was also a shareholder in the business but wasn't a member of the family. So you can imagine how the dynamics might change, and it's hard sometimes. I've been there to separate family issues from business issues. I in another case, I sit on the board of three companies on behalf of, been nominated by Desjardins Capital. So Desjardins, as one of the companies, one of the organizations and financial institutions that's very invested in helping to grow Quebec entrepreneurs, have invested in a variety of companies, and they said, you will benefit by having some of this independent governance. And I wouldn't say that the directors have the owners have embraced the board concept, kicking and screaming, but I think that sometimes they have to be brought to understand what kind of value this can add to their own operations. And I think that when you have the Fonds Solidarité, or you have the National Bank or Desjardins, who are not only investing in a company, not only extending credit to corporations, but saying, we believe that if you adopt some of the same kind of business practices that we've developed to help us grow, you can grow bigger, better, and over the longer term, it becomes a win-win-win.
What do you see as the, I'm going back thinking of this leadership issue, because a lot of entrepreneurs, are very independent minded. They don't like to be told what to do. Not all of them. So what type of leader works best with the board? Because, I look at, the two opposites, almost the very autocratic leader, and then the highly evolved leader who's more participative, leaning towards the democratic approach. I don't like democratic. I like the word more participative, where they're more transparent, they're more inviting employees to participate in discussion, they communicate better. So I would imagine that those that adapt better to a board of advisories would be more the participative. But what's your take on that? Or is it somewhere in between?
Well, I think in general, that would make for an easier entry level. Right. But I've seen really highly focused, really visionary leaders. I haven't worked with Steve Jobs, but I've worked with like that caliber of individual in
Right.
local entrepreneur enterprise, and yet, their needs evolve. On the one hand, I think a good director is going to help them network. So they're going to bring in contacts that that the CEO may not have. So that immediately becomes a value added for the CEO. His or her needs may change, may evolve. I mean, companies or CEOs need to think about the transition. So they're looking to either, eventually transfer ownership to management or to sell their businesses. They have to build up certain level of um, expertise that goes beyond their own capabilities. And a board is going to help them do that because the one of the really interesting aspects of a well functioning board, advisory or board of directors, is that senior management has to interact with the board as well. They'll come and make presentations. They will meet with the director, the external directors, and they will get a better sense of the CEO's mindset and the corporation's strategic direction, if they don't already have it, by those interactions. So again, you want to have this win-win situation, and obviously, if all the CEO or the senior management team are looking for is a rubber stamp that's going to just blindly support the the initiatives that they bring to the board, then they're wasting their time, and the directors are wasting their time as well. But if they're, on the other hand, if they're looking for colleagues who are going to help them avoid blind spots, who are going to really keep them in tune with what is the industry's state of the art, how can we network better? What are the opportunities for acquisitions? Or are we heading towards a major dead end here that will create a huge obstacle for the company's growth? I think that those are all issues that every CEO is going to be concerned about. And if they've got a well-operating board supporting them, they'll be in a better position to face those challenges.
So it sounds like a board will also, I guess one of the key benefits is that the board will help ensure long-term success of the company because, and I just spoke about this in another recent video where I was working briefly with a startup to help them hire a salesperson. And I kind of looked up the stats again, how many startups succeed, and most fail within the first 5 years. I think it's like 70% don't go beyond 5 years. And the key reason, is because they run out of money, but it boils down to poor management, poor planning, and all those reasons, running out of money or not selling enough, obviously, boils down to a lack of a good strategic plan and follow through with that plan. So it sounds like a board can help navigate that and avoid or help the owner become a better manager in all aspects of running a business.
Absolutely. I mean, the example you just gave just brings to mind a situation with one of the companies whose board I'm on, and that's that they have a really excellent, highly competent external financial advisor. They haven't kind of bit the bullet to hire a CFO full time, and the board has persuaded the CEO to go out and recruit CFO. And not only that, I mean, there are a number of the institutional members of this advisory board who are actively helping the CEO recruit and vet the candidates. So, you know, in an era where recruiting and retention are such a challenge for so many companies, you have a board that's helping to add value there as well. And I'm not saying that the CEO might not have eventually made that move, but probably we're doing that 6, 9, 12 months earlier. And I think it's going to be for the benefit of this business that has tremendous potential, but that also is facing big financial hurdles as they move forward.
So just to go back to the difference between an advisory board and a board of directors, from my understanding, listening to you, a board of directors would consist of people that are experts in a certain discipline or business discipline, but are also shareholders in the company, whereas an advisory board are not shareholders.
No. I think that in both cases, you have independent members who may or may not have a stake in the business. I know on one board I sat on, there was a sort of an implicit requirement that we acquire shares in a company, but I think that the fundamental difference is that a board of directors is going to be much more formal, and you have legal responsibilities. Right. So on a board of directors, you will typically expect the company to carry insurance that that indemnifies the directors in case the company is held liable for certain fraudulent activities. Right. You have a formal responsibility if the company doesn't pay its deductions at source, etc. But as an advisory board member, you have some of the same implicit expectations, but you don't have all of the same legal responsibilities.
Okay, I see. So, what is the smallest size company that could consider, let's say, having a board of advisors or board of directors? Probably a board of advisory board. Could it be like a startup of one person? Is that feasible? That somebody that, just wants to make sure that they do the right thing and have that expertise? Or does it have to be certain size company, do you think?
No. I mean, I'm actually coaching a startup right now, Steve. That's basically full time. It's a 2-man shop. It's a 2-lady shop, and they've got a tremendous opportunity in the non-dairy dessert sector. And I think that the founder is already thinking about an advisory board because she knows that this company that today may only have a low 6-figure revenue is going to grow over the next 5 years to an 8-figure business. It's got really great potential. She's going to need to bring on HR, finance, logistics, manufacturing capabilities, and she's, as an entrepreneur, she's got a number of really great talents, but she doesn't have all of those. So if she's going to want to be able to progress quickly, she's going to want to surround herself with some peers who share the same kind of values as she has, and who are going to be able to support her growth. And I think in her case, because she doesn't have a lot of resources, she may be willing to put 5 or 10% of the actual shareholding in that business up, make it available for her advisory board members. And you find entrepreneurs out there who are more than willing to share some of the risk, who may not necessarily be looking at a short-term payoff, but who would really thrill at helping a business person succeed. And if there's a sweetener at the end of the day, where 3, 4, 5 years down the road, there's an opportunity to cash in, it becomes again a win-win.
So, if somebody wanted to set up their advisory board, or what's the typical process? What are the steps involved to do that?
Well, first of all, I think that there are good resources out there. You look at the BDC, you look at Innocent here in Quebec, you look at a number of the financial institutions. They will give you a great deal of information. There's the IAS, the Institut des Administrateurs, IDC. I
guess that would also exist in various countries as well, because my listeners may be, a lot of them are US based. There's probably similar resources. Government.
There is, and there's YPO. There, the chambers of commerce. In every sector. I grew a business in Minnesota, and the local banks were more than willing to help guide us in getting some governance in place. So that's one step. If you've got some institutional finance, they may also be willing to kick in some financial support for the creation of an advisory board. Mm-hmm. And I think that as a CEO or as a business founder, you got to try to figure out what kind of complementary advice do you want to have around the table, and then in the same way that you're going to go out and interview for really high qualified senior managers, you want to do the same thing with the board members that you want to bring onto your board. And I think that beyond that, again, same way that you might recruit senior management, you got to think about how you're going to onboard them. How are you going to train them? How are you going to give them as deep a dive, as intensely and quickly as you can, to bring them up to speed? Because they're bringing external experience to this board, and I've sat with people who worked with likes of David's Teas, or with Le Chateau, or with big dairy businesses like AgroPure. They have their industry perspective, but they don't know the ins and outs of the specific company that we're going to be working with. So, how are we going to get up to speed as quickly as possible? And that's why I said, right up front, I think one of the biggest commitments is time, and the willingness to share the secret sauce that a particular business has.
When you say onboarding, so you mean onboarding, like bringing them up to speed about the company itself, about where the company is and what their challenges are, things like that? Because if I was to put together an advisory board, I don't know how to run. I mean, is there a chairperson that's appointed to run the meetings, or who runs the meeting? But I guess I'm asking two questions. One about the onboarding and one about the chairing of the meetings.
They are two questions, and they're good questions, Steve. I think, first of all, in terms of the onboarding, you want to be able to visit the operations. You want to be able to meet and, if possible, have one-on-one, not only with the CEO, but with the key management team members. So you want to meet the people responsible for the IT, or for business development, or for marketing, or for finance, or, if we're in the retail field, logistics, private label, food service, health and beauty, B2C. What does their department do? What does she feel are the key accomplishments for the department? What are some of the key stats for the particular department? What are its strengths and what are its challenges? So even just asking your managers to think about these things as they're going to present it to an outside board member can also be a very valuable tool, and that that will also help the CEO take the measure of the particular board member. And I think that going to the second part of the question you asked, I think that then, the CEO has to decide whether she or he is going to chair the meetings, or whether it would be helpful to have somebody, one of the external members, someone who maybe doesn't have to deal with the managers on a day-to-day basis, come in and provide that that leadership at the board level. And I think that's going back to one of your other questions about the ego of the CEO. I mean, I think that's where the CEO may benefit from stepping back, not having the responsibility of choreographing the meetings and of doing the follow-up, but also being willing to be held accountable for any of the follow-up items that one meeting raises that need to be followed up in the following meetings. And that's something that I've seen work really, really well. On the other hand,
like having a facilitator for your meetings. The manager could even, I mean, I teach this, that a manager of a department can have a team meeting, and he could say, as long as somebody's trained how to facilitate a meeting, how to run a meeting, sometimes somebody could do it better than the manager, and the manager's there to participate, So yeah, for sure, it could be done that way. Is there I imagine you've chaired meetings, having been sitting on so many boards. Is there some standards in terms of, I guess it would be more at the board of directors would have more stringent processes or, agendas, but is there standards for, let's say, advisory boards on how to run a meeting and quarterly meeting? Is there templates or suggested agendas?
There are a lot out there. You just Google. Harvard Business Review has a number of really good articles. Right. I find that basically in terms of mapping out what's going to be a good plan for the year, I think that's very, very useful. Whether you're the board chair or you're a member of an advisory board, and I think that coming up with a calendar where well in advance when the meetings are going to happen, and having a template for your agenda, so that again what to expect and that you can prepare, because I think that as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, you can expect and you must expect that your board members come well prepared for the particular meeting. So I think that in terms of a typical agenda, Steve, I think that we need to have a market analysis. So we need to basically, get a sense of what are the trends, what's the competition doing in our particular sector, um, what are our business follow up on our business objectives. Where do we stand in terms of our short term and midterm goals and our projects, whether it's capex, adding a new production line, whether it's hiring some staff to build a new territory, whatever. Then obviously, you've got your meeting minutes from the previous meeting. So any pending items, anything that needs to be followed up, you want that to be top of mind so that we're not just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing whether it sticks. We want to, if we ask some questions, management should have the answers. I mean, hopefully, if they're more current answers, they've been supplied in between the two meetings. But at very least, you're going to do follow up on pending items, meeting to meeting. I think it's really important.
So this is essentially what a business owner should be doing regularly with his own team. And with an advisory board, he can combine the two to a certain degree. Maybe not as often,
Sure.
and in between have his own meetings, and I could see how by the employees, the managers meeting the advisory board members could even build confidence about the company and about their future as they see that the owner is really investing in really good practices and bringing on board experts. That could really build the sense of ownership, the sense of belonging to the company, engagement, feeling of confidence. And we used to have that concept of job security, but it's kind of like disappeared. But this could actually be a form of job security because you feel, hey, this company has a future, and if I perform well, I have a future with it. So it's another benefit, I would say, as well.
Absolutely. I think that I wish I had the stats to back this up, but my sense is that you're going to retain staff and retain them longer,
especially your key employees.
Yeah, and
you have a better
and
chance.
Frankly, yeah, and I have two of the boards that I'm on right now are specifically implementing employee stock option ESOP plans. At the behest of a board or senior management, so that they do just that. It's so critical for us to retain the staff and help us recruit. In this era where you've got such competition out there for really qualified leadership.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good. I've kind of gone through everything I wanted to know about, I guess, an advisory board or board of directors. Is there something that you feel should be added that we didn't cover? Maybe other experiences that you've had, a story you could tell, a really great success story to end things?
Look, I first of all, I at the risk of sounding like I'm preaching for my parish, I think that it is a proven system that works, and for any entrepreneur, any executive who's who's considering getting involved in a board, I think that it can be a really stimulating, gratifying experience to support the growth of an organization, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, and the collegiality around the board room table is for me, it's been an opportunity to build some lifelong relationships with people who I have a lot admiration for. And you know, I find that it's a great learning experience. You know, you learn about the business, you learn about people, you're all working together around the same challenge and the same project, and it becomes a really interesting way to grow personally. So, you know, that's my own personal perspective. I think that every single one of the companies that I've had the privilege of working with has presented presented some really interesting situations. I mean, I could go on probably for the next couple of hours just talking about specific cases. I think that, you know, we're dealing with a major acquisition right now with one particular company. We're dealing with a highly competitive expansion into a highly competitive sector where, you know, where we're looking to raise 8 figures and more for the growth, and where, you know, the financial partners have certain trepidation, but where the vision of the founders is such that we need this in order to either, you know, lead, follow, or get out of the way, as Iacocca would have said. You know, if I look at the like my nonprofit, not-for-profit experience, I sit on the board of an organization called CESO, CESO, where, you know, we provide experience and support in about 25 different countries around the world, where we share executive experience. And, you know, now we're working on some projects that are on the ESG, on the environmental social governance side of things. I'm learning a tremendous amount as we, you know, about this as we move forward, and we're looking to help support businesses in the extraction field. You know, so I mean, I think that it's there's so many different experiences that one can draw from this, and you know, I'll put it out there. I personally and Stratic International are available to just share some of that know-how, if, as, and when anybody who views this feels like they want to dive a little bit deeper into this.
Great, that's great. Yeah, so I'll put a link to your website. I guess people can contact you through there, or even through LinkedIn. You have a good presence there. So I'll put links to that. And if somebody's listening and is intrigued or has been thinking about forming a board or wants to learn more from Larry, as he said, he'd be happy to speak with you and explore that. So I guess that kind of wraps up our conversation around board of directors, and I'm sure we could choose other topics to narrow down in when it comes to perhaps business development. That's something I don't often talk about on my channel, but is something I've always been interested. I come from a sales background, actually a family business sales background, and I've taught sales to companies as well. So, and that's an essential element of every business success. Is, you know, the first thing you have to survive, and you have to get customers, and could be interesting to talk about that in a future interview. So thank you very much, Larry. It's been a pleasure and highly informative to speak with you. And I look forward to riding our bikes together now that summer weather is here and the hot days are upon us. So enjoy the summer. We'll see you out on the road. For those listening, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on that notification button so you get news of new videos. Check out some of the other expert videos on my channel. I'm starting to do these regularly. So I think I've created a playlist. If not, I will. And you can check those out. There's also blog articles on my website that accompany most of my videos, and there's tools that you could download for free, like goal planning worksheet I mentioned, job description forms, all kinds of different tools. There's a link for that in the description of the video. Thank you again, Larry. We'll see you
It's a
soon.
pleasure. Thank you, Steve, and see you on the road in a peloton that takes us further down the road.
You could do the pulling. I'll follow you. Thank you for listening, everyone, and talk to you soon.